done that numerous times and I didn't get no help, basically. I just got fobbed off. And this is the only place that's helped me. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where I'd be now.
Data doesn't lie, and when it comes to quality data, when we've been asking for, the data in terms of how a BME community is accessing various services, up to now we're still waiting for some of this data that to be provided. So we've been identifying gaps, and we've been saying these are the gaps that we're seeing from feedback that we're getting from not just our service users, but also from the community as well.
That they kind of perceive BAME organisations as radical organisations, very outspoken, but we've had to be because, we've tried the gently approach. We've tried the kind of subservient positioning that has taken place, to no avail. So now we're at a stage where we're going to call it for what it is racism.
The charity sector is in turmoil as a result of the pandemic.
But with shops like these closed and fundraising events cancelled, charities say their income has disappeared overnight.
We had support, we had no food, we had no money, we had nothing left, 2 days supplies left, maximum.
If it gets any worse and there's sort of mass shutdown and we're all told to start working from home and not to go out, then we can't actually open the shelter, and therefore our guests haven't got anywhere to go. They could potentially end up on the streets.
1 in 10 UK charities are calculated to be facing bankruptcy by the end of 2020 due to a loss of fundraising income. This has now led to a £10 billion shortfall in the sector. However, according to the Ubele Initiative, BAME organisations are being disproportionately affected, with 9 in 10 charities set to close and a whopping 87% that are BAME-led that will cease to function only after 3 months. Here in the city of Leicester, over 55% of its population are from black and ethnic minority backgrounds. Yet the local lockdown in July has forced many of the city's financially marginalised projects, being BME-led, to be more vulnerable to economic hardship. Are BAME charities being pushed to the brink of extinction? And could this be an unlawful case of racism, discrimination and victimisation? I visited one of Leicester's longest running BME organisations, the ADAR project, which has spanned for over 30 years. It is the only BAME-led mental health charity remaining, and fears are rising due to numerous unsuccessful trials of acquiring funding since the lockdown.
With COVID and there is more funding coming out, but unfortunately the organisations running these funding pots for the big organisations, you've got Mind, you've got Comic Relief and other organisations, they've got funding, but unfortunately we've not been able to access that funding as yet, because we've put the application in, but due to demand or due to their cultural competence as well in some of these organisations, we've not been successful. And even our own commissioners, we've been talking to them about they need to understand why they don't commission a culturally sensitive service in Leicester. With the population of Leicester and the diversity, it's ridiculous that it's not been, as ADAR as the only organisation has not commissioned to deliver a culturally sensitive service. It's all the organisations that are funded are generic services or generic organisations. So we're still pushing for more culturally sensitive services that need to be commissioned.
While demand for mental health services increased overwhelmingly due to COVID, the supply of ADAR's facilities are decreasing rapidly. I sat down with CEO Harjit Sandhu about the fate of ADAR and her own concerns about the charity shutting down after a 3-decade run.
If our organisation, I'll just give you an example, when the DV funding comes to an end at the end of October, right, it comes to an end, we won't be able to continue to provide those services. What we're currently doing is trying our best to make sure that we can get other resources in to enable us to continue. So it's a short-term project. The lottery have also given us 6 months of additional funding, so we can have another full-time counsellor, right? But again, that's short-term funding, right? Some of our service users also purchase services from us because they have a personal budget or a direct payment, right? And we have had instances where a person has kind of passed away, so we've lost that funding stream, so we've lost that income as well. But I think my main concern is, and it does keep me awake at night, what's going to happen if we don't get the funding, or the commissioners don't change their policy and look more favourably at funding their own homegrown organisations. What will happen to those hundreds and thousands of BAME people who look to projects like ADAR to help them, whether that's with counselling, whether that's with reducing the isolation, whether that's with the housing issue, whether that's with their benefits issue, whether that's attending, workshops such as Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, having that interaction with other people as well.
For BAME-led charities such as ADAR, such lack of funding signifies an even wider issue in recognising culturally appropriate services that adequately aid Leicester's disenfranchised communities.
So I'm going to be very clear about this. I think the practices need to be reviewed by an independent person to come into Leicester to look at the commissioning strategy, to look at commissioning decisions, because it's not a case of there's no, BAME commissioners. Yes, there were BAME commissioners, right? But if the cultural competence or the organisation's systems are systemically racist, even black commissioners will work to a Eurocentric model that is going to be pleasing to the kind of colonial narrative that they've absorbed over the last couple of decades. So I want to see people in those positions who are competent, both culturally and in terms of delivery, and can actually look and see what does the community need, make sure its needs are met, not take the chance with some organisation that isn't appropriate.
With financial setbacks affecting ADAR providing resources, what does this mean for the thousands of its users that heavily depend on their services even amidst the pandemic?
They're the only one that's helped me, basically. So there's nowhere else to go. So there was nowhere else to go. This is my last resort, so to speak. Because I think it's after the suicide attempt that I got the help from here. So if I didn't have them around, who knows, I may have tried it more. I may have done it again.
Fitzroy Fearon, an ADAR user, has endured restrictions using the service due to COVID-19. This has greatly triggered his battle with depression and anxiety since the lockdown.
The lockdown, so people can't come around to help me out and stuff, so I'm kind of slipping back into the depressive mode. Try not to, but then I just play my music. That helps me a lot. Because I'm a DJ as well. Funny enough,
Yeah. Being a black man suffering from mental health, Fitzroy has lost trust in other ways to obtain mainstream help, including the NHS, seeing that there was a lack of representation.
They weren't doing nothing for me. I would call the ambulance, they take me to the hospital. Many a time I asked to get sectioned, but they wouldn't do it. So yeah, they would even actually threw me at the hospital one time. Security, forced security, got me and threw me out. Yeah.
Why would they throw you out? For what?
I don't know, because they see me as a problem. I don't know. Because I tell them I want help, but they're saying that I don't need it. I don't know.
With small local charities such as the ADAR project only having the capacity to offer short-term contracts, several reports have indicated discrepancies between small BAME organisations and white mainstream charities. For example, the Ubele Initiative found that micro and small BAME organisations only receive between £10,000 and £100,000 while heavily relying on volunteers. Moreover, it was calculated that if those organisations were to close permanently, a projected 15,000 to 20,000 users per week would lose their services. Meanwhile, ACIVO reported that such inequality in the charity sector is perpetuated by a lack of racial diversity, as 92% of all charity trustees are white. On the other hand, only 9.6% of trustees in the top 100 charities by income are from BAME backgrounds. One campaign group, however, aims to reform the structures and culture of the charity sector. The #CharitySoWhite campaign hopes to bring systemic change through doorstepping leaders to prioritize small BAME-led charities by taking action and accountability.
COVID-19 has, changed things so substantially, and I wanted to see in terms of what has been your experience really witnessing that drastic change, and how much has it impacted, BAME charities?
Of our campaign, we had an open letter to funders that I think it had over 100 signatures, and right off the bat, we could see that the pandemic will disproportionately impact the most disadvantaged in our society. And then we also know that those same charities are the ones going to be hit the hardest. So we asked for about 20% of funding to be protected for BAME-led organisations. And it's been great so far. It's been really slow progress, admittedly, but some funders like Comic Relief, the Lloyds Bank Foundation, as part of their funding for COVID, for charities, they've protected a specific amount for BAME-led organisations. So that's been, positive, and it's a bit of a domino effect where you have other funders now considering what more can they do around racial equality. But I still think we need to go a step further to just think about the long term, not just the response.
As the Charity So White campaign continues to fight for equal opportunity and racial justice, I spoke to Oliver Williams from the Lloyds Bank Foundation about how national charities with beneficial influence were responding to the ongoing crisis.
We're really struck by two pieces of research in particular. Firstly, Charity So White published a fascinating piece on the dimensions of inequality that shows all the different ways that Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities have been hardest hit by COVID-19 crisis. Alongside that, the Ubele Initiative published a piece of research into how charities led by Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities have been the hardest hit when it comes to funding. They really have struggled to obtain funding from larger grant makers, and that gave us that was the catalyst for us to take some steps to address this. So as well as setting aside that 25% of our budget to go to these communities, we've also been working really intensively with some expert consultants with a background in racial equity funding who have helped us reflect on our own systems and processes to make sure there's no implicit bias or prejudice in the way that we make grants.
I contacted the Minister of Race and Ethnic Disparities, Kemi Banidok, who declined to comment on the government's approach to tackle racial inequalities in the charity sector. In addition, local politicians such as Leicester City Mayor Sir Peter Soulsby and Leicester MP Claudia Webb have yet to respond and offer an official statement. With the government not coming forward concerning such ongoing issues, what does the future hold for small local BAME charities such as the JOUR?
We're in an old building that's falling to bits, yeah? We don't even have double glazing. Right, so you have to look at, so the project that's helping people who are really deprived, who are marginalised, who are living in poverty, are also receiving support from an organisation that is also living with poverty in terms of funding, in terms of where they operate from. It does make it very, very difficult, yeah, for us in so many ways. But I also believe that we are resilient. We've had to be for centuries. We've had to fight for our freedoms. We've had to fight for everything, and we'll continue to fight for it.
The unjust consequences of the coronavirus that's been impacting BAME communities in the United Kingdom has been exacerbated by the increasing decline of local BAME-led organisations. So without better funding and better policy making, it could make disparities even worse. We can only wait to see what actions are taken next during these uncertain times.